Welcome. As mentioned, and I can see some of you now, are familiar faces, and I hope it's the same for you because this is the 5th chapter of the open house we've been doing. Each time we try to curate the session around a topic which is relevant for you. हमारी कोशिश रहती है कि हम जो भी टॉपिक चूज करें वो आपके लिए रेलेवेंट है और आपके लिए या तो नॉलेज बढ़े या आपको कोई लीड मिले आगे टू डिस्कस फर्दर विद अस. So this session specifically the topic is around supply chain financing for MSMEs. Financing generally is obviously a very pertinent topic for anyone running a business, especially an MSME. So for that, we are not just going to talk about the different types of financing instruments out there, but we want to firstly start by discussing the pain points कि क्या difficulties आप face करते हैं अपने business में, क्या हमारी understanding है, and to curate and to take the discussion in a more specialized format. We have a guest speaker with us today, Mr. Abhay Goswami. He's a senior manager at CredAble. So he'll be talking us through some of the key issues when it comes to supply chain financing. Now, Saurabh, if we could just quickly run through the agenda on the next slide. Right. So this is how this 1-hour session is structured. I'll start with a brief introduction on Venwiz and some key business highlights. And then the main discussion between Mr. Abhay Goswami and my colleague Siddhant. And then we have 2 special speakers, our vendors, Mr. Pradeep Sawant and Mr. Divakar Gowda, to present their perspective. And in the end, we'll have sufficient time for Q&A between all of us. So starting with the introduction to Venwiz, most of you are already aware, but I'd like to, Saurabh, we can go on to the next slide. Next slide. Right, most of you are already aware, but I'll still revise for our benefit that we're a digital platform and we connect manufacturing companies on one side to project vendors on the other, which is us right now who have assembled here. And the main objective is through our different SaaS tools, software tools, we are able to ensure efficient project delivery. Be it the client side or the vendor side, we know delivering the project on time is the priority for both sides. So we assist that through our digital tools. And the main component, the main contributor, how we are able to do that is discovery. आपको पता है किसी भी प्रोजेक्ट में सही वेंडर की डिस्कवरी में सबसे ज्यादा टाइम जाता है, सबसे ज्यादा मुश्किल काम है, बिकॉज इट्स नॉट जस्ट अबाउट फाइंडिंग द राइट वेंडर्स, ऑल्सो इंश्योरिंग दे हैव द टेक्निकल एक्सपर्टीज एंड मेनी मोर फैक्टर्स. And as you are aware, all of you have profiles on Venwiz, and you know we have digitized an earlier otherwise unstructured information. So that is what Venwiz is doing. Moving on, where we have reached so far. The next slide. Right, on the client side, the biggest advantage you have, you are in touch with certain other companies also, XYZ, who say they provide you leads. But we are not just here to, guarantee itne number of leads milenge. We provide high quality leads. And that is because you can see the type of clients we are interacting with. We already have live projects going on in 30+ locations across India. You can see in the map here. And if we come to the vendor network we have built and are building rapidly on the next slide. Saurabh, next one. Yeah. You can see that we are already actually, this number is slightly outdated. We are at 6,500. So you can see we update at the rate of 700 vendors per month. And you can see the density. We have a stronger presence in Southern India. But besides that also, our vendor pool covers all the major CapEx categories. And we do not onboard just anybody so easily. We have a very thorough 5-step assessment process in place, after which the vendor is finally onboarded. Coming to the final slide. Right, as mentioned, present across categories, and while projects, capex requirement is our focus, we also cater to MRO requirements in any manufacturing plant. Moving on, just a key snapshot of the business highlights. Number one is the database. So we are rapidly building on this, and we are at 6,500 right now, and monthly it's an 11% increase, and as I mentioned, translates somewhere close to 700. In terms of job status, more than 25% of the jobs are in the client vendor negotiation stage. So there are a lot of vendors who are now getting job requests actively on the platform. So we will urge you also to be very active with your profile updation and checking for updates. Coming to content creation, most of you might have seen on our website and on a LinkedIn that we create case studies. We have created 27 so far, and they have been quite successful. A couple of them even led to vendors getting direct client inquiry. So we covered some critical business aspect they had delivered, and we create a case study around it. Coming to quotations, for 70% of the jobs which are posted on the platform by our clients, our Venwiz vendors have submitted requests. So this is about how we are doing, and this is only going to improve further. And now, with this context in place, I want to hand over to my colleague, Siddhant Gupta. He heads strategy here at Venwiz, and he'll be leading the discussion with our guest speaker. Siddhant, over to you.
Thanks, Mehul. Hey, hello, everyone. So,
yeah, hello, sir. Hello. Hello, Mr. Siddharth.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
For the purpose of this particular Abhay Goswami, Senior Relationship Manager for the lending team at CredAble, with over 5 years of experience in SME lending, previously associated with IC. Right. So, hi, I welcome Abhay to the session. Hey, Abhay.
Hi, Siddhant. Yeah, I'm glad to be here at Venwiz. So, this is more about the MSMEs that we discussed, were part of the Venwiz network, right?
Yes, that is right.
Yeah, sure.
So definitely would want to structure our entire discussion around how the entire financing landscape is catering to the MSMEs right now, and what more can we offer with you from CredAble and we from Venwiz. What is it that we can collectively do more for the MSMEs already on the call, or others also within our network?
Sure.
So, Abhay, just to kickstart the discussion, what I would want your help is in laying down the overall landscape as to what are the types of funding that exist in the market, and and which are the instruments that are specifically catering to MSMEs.
Sure. So, just to give you a brief here, so the Indian MSME lending space is almost there's a credit demand of close to $490 billion, and which translates to a very substantially huge amount of almost 40 lakh crore in terms of credit demand, right? That Indian MSMEs have. Now, while there are various ways that these could be funded, the traditional routes of secured lending include limits like cash credit, overdraft, loan against property, term loans, demand loans, etc., which are collateralized. And then there are other unsecured lines which were earlier restricted only to an unsecured business loan, which can be availed from a bank or NBFC. But now, with days progressing and with technology coming in, there are various other ways which enables specifically supply chain finance solutions.
Got it. If you could also help us, say you mentioned secured funding versus newer age kind of financing that has come in, right? Most I would understand the broader bucket would be unsecured funding, right? So What is it? Do you have someone? Would you be knowing as to why this particular side of unsecured financing also came up? What are the differences between the two? What are the bigger advantage around unsecured funding? If you could shed some light on
Sure.
that would be helpful.
So from a credit perspective, anyone giving a loan, bank or NBFC, right? They need to keep their facilities secured, and that is how secured funding came into place in the first place, right? So any institution starts ideally, or any financial organization in a country, in any country, starts with secured funding. Eventually, unsecured funding comes into picture when you know that there is a high growth in business that is possible, but there is no collateral, right? So there are instances where a business could be growing rapidly. However, to kind of undertake certain projects or certain, kind of fulfill certain POs, there is a lack of funding in terms of the raw material purchase or the working capital requirements. And that is where these new age or unsecured lending plays come into picture, which ideally work on these billable events, as we call them, like a PO or an invoice or these kinds of things. So the necessity arose mainly from a perspective that there was always an exhaustion, right? Any MSME will have 2 crores of collateral, 50 lakhs of collateral, and that's it. I mean, no one can have more than that at an MSME level, right? So there's an exhaustion to secured lending, which is where unsecured comes into play.
Okay. And now you're saying that that is the trajectory for that any country or other places would have also gone through, where starting with secured lending and would have evolved into unsecured lending also coming into place to increase the speed of growth for a lot of these companies.
Correct.
So now how do you see the unsecured lending space being? How big has it surpassed the secured lending, or is it still in its nascent status?
So in India, I would say it has definitely not surpassed the secured lending space. Probably out of the total $490 billion of requirement, probably at least 75% would be secured lending, right? Because the MSME space is very high risk as a category for banks or NBFCs, right? आज bank जो पैसा lend करता है आगे, ultimately it comes from someone's savings account or current account, right? So the money, lending out the money is riskier and riskier as the day passes by. And with more RBI regulations, NPAs वगैरह बढ़ गए थे पिछले 5 साल में, तो the restrictions have grown stronger. So secured lending is still the major play, but if you are looking for a fast-paced growth and not spend time in creating a collateral, then unsecured is the way to kind of propel faster.
Okay, understood. My next question was around that only. When should a company decide to go for, say, an unsecured lending? And can that be something that they take before secured lending also? Yeah, or is it like once they exhaust secured lending, then they should go into unsecured lending?
So there are two ways. I mean, someone who already has जिसने अपना property, say factory, residential property, commercial property, they've already kept as collateral with a bank and already avail, say, at 50 lakh, 25 lakh, 1 crore kind of a secured lending. Then it would be an ideal scenario that only once they see that their secured lending utilization is fully utilized, post which they look for an unsecured lending. But ideally in today's time, what we've seen in the market is there are a lot of new players, new MSME businesses that are coming up, right? Everything from traders to manufacturers. And these players do not currently have a secured line. Now for them to go for a secured line again is a very big challenge, because these days manufacturing facilities are also most probably rented out. So they are taking leased spaces or rented spaces to run their manufacturing plants. So what would you keep as collateral? आपके पास factory वगैरह है नहीं owned to keep as collateral. So it's ideal that they start directly with an unsecured lending space, because unsecured lets you build on a lot of financial profit and loss, आपके turnover side पे, आपके balance sheet side पे, to make it strong enough कि 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, आप secured lending ले सकते हैं.
Okay. Okay. Got it. So in the market, what are the new age kind of instruments that are coming up? So you said mostly based on invoice, PO,
Correct.
that are coming up. So if you could help us understand within unsecured lending also, what are the kind of instruments that exist?
Sure. So in unsecured lending space nowadays, earlier it was just a business loan, say given by anything and everything, all banks, NBFCs, everything from an HDFC bank to a Bajaj Finserv will give you unsecured business loans in the range of 25 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 15 lakhs. And these are EMI based loans, right? Now the new age supply chain finance programs that have come in are mainly billable events. कोई भी event जो bill हो सकता है from either party. It could be a PO, right? Now PO is not a fixed billable event, which is why PO is on the riskier side. But then there is PO as a instrument or document. There is invoice. There in several kind of cases there is GRN, goods receipt note. For logistics participants or logistic suppliers, there is a lorry receipt, right? So these are various billable events, and ये billable event को use करके a financing can be arranged. That once you've raised an invoice, आपको payment 45 days के बाद मिलने वाला है. But basis that invoice, you can receive say 80%, 70% of funding on that day itself, जिस दिन आपने invoice raise किया है. Similarly, for logistics, आपने transport भेजा है, उसका lorry receipt है. Now transport can take 3 days, 5 days to reach from one state to another, post which you get it authorized as an invoice, you generate an invoice that gets approved. That is an entire time consuming process which takes another 15-30 days. With a lorry receipt, you can get funded upfront. So those are the kind of billable events, what we categorize it as. Yeah.
Okay. So this is one that is more around any particular instrument that you try to peg it around.
Correct.
Then other instruments, just-in-time financing, and then anchor-led financing. Are these other kind of models apart from this billable? Yeah, how does it work?
So no. So I think just-in-time again is linked directly to these. So LR funding, as I told you, for the logistics provider is a just-in-time financing. So it all falls in the just-in-time category. So except for say a PO or an invoice discounting, which are clearly defined programs, anything with other instruments, other physical or digital instruments is all categorized under just-in-time financing. So there are several just-in-time financing programs which run on milestone-based program or progress of a particular project, right? So those fall under just-in-time. Now anchor-based is again dedicatedly, all anchor-based programs are again routed through the invoice discounting mechanism only. It is just that the anchor is on board first, and hence vendors don't have to go through any evaluation.
Okay. Got it. So I think in the last 2 minutes, we may have referred to some terms like invoice discounting and all. So people may not be able to understand that very clearly. So if we just go through the understanding of, say, if we take one billable instrument, say invoice, and we just try to understand how the process typically looks like. I think that will give
Sure. So as I told you, कि कोई भी large company है in today's time across India, once you supply goods to them, they will want you to create an invoice. Now that invoice gets approved, but you have a payment term. So आपके PO में लिखा होता है that there is a payment term of 90 days, 60 days, 45 days, right? Now you have to wait for those 60 days. अब आपने 50 lakhs का goods deliver कर दिया है. You've already delivered 50 lakhs का goods. आपका पैसा लग गया है उसमें, समझ लो 40 lakhs for example. But to receive that 50 lakhs, you have to wait for 60 days or 90 days. Now, what happens is invoice discounting program, you submit that invoice to an NBFC, right? Say, just like what we do at CredAble, you submit the invoice to us, right? We have already approved that end client as a buyer कि आप बेच रहे हो, for example, Tata को, right? So once you have raised that invoice, you automatically receive, say, a 70-80% funding against that invoice. Now, on the 60th day or 90th day, whenever the client pays, we create an escrow mechanism. The money comes into the escrow account. आपको जो हमने day 1 पे दिया है, plus the interest is collected out of that, and the remaining money is transferred back to you. So what this helps in is, instead of waiting or paying EMIs, fixed EMIs every month, you receive the money upfront. आपको पैसे पहले ही मिल गए invoice के साथ, and you don't have to worry कि मैं ये कब repay करूंगा इस loan को, because 60 दिन बाद that end client or the larger company will automatically pay into the account.
Okay. Got it. Seems like a safe bet for both and win-win for both the parties. For sure.
Correct.
Similarly, Abhay, if you could talk about PO also as an instrument, how will that work, or how different is it going to be from this invoice discounting? Focusing on these two more, because this is also exploring these two instruments for the kind of onboard.
Correct. So for PO, there are certain points that are looked at by NBFCs or banks, right? It is more about what we call as PO fulfillment ratio, right? Because PO कोई guaranteed document नहीं है कि the job will be done. Yeah. It is just an order. So now, because it is slightly riskier, banks or NBFCs will look, or CredAble for that matter, will look towards funding, say 30% or 40% of the PO value, right? But that is also dependent on how historical track record, how is your historical track record in terms of PO fulfillment. कि आपको पिछले 1 साल में कोई भी PO जो मिला हो ऐसे कोई लार्ज क्लाइंट से, समझ लो PO आपको 25 lakhs का मिला है, हिस्टोरिकली यू आर रिसीविंग 25 lakhs 50 lakhs के POs. हाउ हैज योर एज अ सप्लायर, हाउ हैज योर डिलीवरी बीन, कि आपने 25 लाख के सामने 12 लाख का ही माल सप्लाई किया है, या 25 लाख के सामने आपने 25 लाख का माल सप्लाई किया है हिस्टोरिकली, right? So all of those factors are considered by the credit team, post which the credit team decides कि आपका कॉस्ट ऑफ रॉ मटेरियल्स जो आपके प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस से दिखता है मेनली, और कॉस्ट ऑफ ट्रेडेड गुड्स, ये समझ लो 30% है, एंड वी हैव से अ PO fulfillment ratio of X. So both of those numbers are combined, and उसके बेसिस पे डिसाइड किया जाता है that for this supplier we can do a 40% PO funding. So again, then the PO is submitted to the NBFC, and against which the NBFC will release the funds. Automatically, your PO fulfillment can take, say, 30 days, plus you have another 30 days after raising the invoice. So total time period आपका 60 days या 90 days हो गया. 90 days के बाद जब end client पैसे देगा, तो उसके सामने the PO amount is settled off automatically. So again, यहाँ पे भी there is no burden of EMI as such.
Okay. Is the time period to, say, disburse a loan against the PO a little more than that compared to the invoice? Because I felt that the number of checks were a little more in the PO.
So usually these facilities are sanctioned upfront. So in terms of sanctioning of, say, an invoice discounting loan to some supplier, if it takes 1 week or 5 days, PO financing में it can take up to 2 weeks or 3 weeks. लेकिन once it is sanctioned, once it is approved, that say for an example, you have a supplier जो supply करता है Maruti Suzuki को, right? Now, if I have sanctioned PO financing lines for Maruti Suzuki for that particular borrower, for the MSME, that MSME can come at any given point of time, submit a PO and get the money on the same day. Just like an invoice, the money is disbursed on the same day. The TAT is not even 24 hours, I would say. सुबह को आपने PO या invoice submit किया, दोपहर को you get the money in your bank account. But sanctioning is slightly trickier in terms of PO financing.
And then the PO also needs to be of the same type for which it has been sanctioned. For which
Correct.
Okay, got it. So for the kind of instruments that we have talked about, I understand that CredAble is one of the players, and it is not, if not the largest, one of the largest players in the market. So what are the other players in the market like CredAble, and how is CredAble also operating? Have you tied up at the back? Yeah, how are the...
So yes, so there are various models in the market. One is where the NBFC or tech platforms like CredAble will want to tie up with banks and not fund anything themselves. So those are platforms which work on a dedicated software designed by RBI, right? It's called TredX, and these platforms which use TredX or Treads, they basically work on a reverse auction model. कि आपने आज invoice submit कर दिया, आपने you have delivered say for Tata Power, and you have submitted the invoice of Tata Power. Now it is up to the banks to decide कि ये invoice के सामने मुझे पैसा देना है या नहीं देना है, क्या interest rate पे देना है, how much funding. So in any given point of time, say you can have 2 banks bidding for your invoice, 0 banks bidding for your invoice, or 10 banks bidding for your invoice. Now that is entirely a play of luck of the exposure that a bank wants to take in this particular MSME space. Right. So there are those platforms which operate on Treads, right? There are other NBFCs or fintechs like CredAble, which are also lending through their own books or partnerships with other NBFCs. Say something like a Muthoot Finance, Sundaram Finance, Bajaj. Not that Bajaj is tying up with anyone primarily, but yeah, they would want to tie up and not give out the loan themselves, right? Because as I told you, MSME is a very, very risky space. So if banks are taking a risk, cautious call, banks सोच के lend कर रहे हैं, तो उस sector में unlimited lending तो किसी NBFC के बस की है नहीं, right? So either they will restrict the amount कि भाई I will lend only up to 10 lakh rupees per MSME, so that my exposure is not large, or else they will take a cautious slow call ki let the banks do the credit assessment, we will just provide a front end. So CredAble as such has dedicated programs where there are huge funding values that go out or are disbursed. Say 200 suppliers ko funding mili hai in a single day, but that is for a dedicated anchor down program, where CredAble has a direct tie-up with the anchor, yeah, end client, right? So say if today an Amazon, तो Amazon के सारे suppliers हैं मेरे पास, and we will fund all suppliers of Amazon. We don't mind funding those, right? But that money again is coming at the back end from some bank. On the other side, if I look at a borrower up, so if someone comes to me and tells me that I want a 50 lakh credit line or a loan for invoice discounting of say some large company, say Jindal or Motorola or anything like that, I will still sanction the limit, but that will be my money. So I will be monitoring it on a regular basis कि 60 दिन बाद or 90 दिन बाद, as the invoice schedule is the end client paying on time or not, right? Because that decides how we evaluate credit for those end clients also, not just the borrower.
And for the loans that you have just mentioned, what is the kind of ticket size that is mostly being carried out, say Amazon or say Jindal, or how are you assessing that?
So we don't, so as far as CredAble is concerned, we don't have a fixed ticket size, right? If you are doing say a yearly business, say a quarterly business, for example, if you have a 90-day credit period cycle, payment terms आपका 90 days है, and you are doing 90 days mein you are able to do say 2 crores of business, for example, so I will give you a sanction of 2 crores. I don't, CredAble will not check if you already have a working capital, do not have a working capital, anything like that, right? So if the end client is approved, as I told you ki Amazon hai, if it is approved, then I can fund unlimited invoices of Amazon, no questions asked. Even if I say sanction 2 crore rupees and that is exhausted, you can come back to me saying ki I have another 1 crore of invoice. I want to enhance my limit by another 1 crore, and we can do that.
Achha. And there's no lower cap or upper cap at all within CredAble, or as to how they operate?
So effectively, no. We would want to start anywhere. So we are absolutely comfortable sanctioning limits or loan limits, which are, say, invoice discounting, just-in-time financing, up to 5 crores for any first-time borrower that is coming to us. And then obviously we are actively involved on a day-to-day basis with that particular borrower. So if that limit then needs to be enhanced from 5 crore to, say, a 7 crore, I have a track record with my own NBFC to support that.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So when you say keep monitoring on a day-to-day basis, I just wanted to check about these steps and controls only that you have put in place. Ideally, I would look at it as a 3-step process, right? One is the dispersal part, one is the continuous monitoring part, and one is the final collection and recovery part.
Correct.
How are you going about each of these 3 steps?
Got it. So one is obviously, as I told you, right? So disbursement is a one-time event. You submit an invoice or a PO and you avail disbursement against that. But other than that, on a monthly basis, we ask clients to submit their bank account statements, which is a standard thing, right? It is you get your bank accounts on mail from your respective banks. Now, what that helps us to analyze from a credit perspective is, if I have funded you, I don't want the borrower to default not just on my loan, but anywhere in any of the transactions. So we, as an NBFC or a bank, their primary concern is that they will check for check bounces. If you had any check bounces, if you've if you've received money, say mera paisa 90 days ke baad aane wala hai as per payment terms. But in those 90 days, are you receiving additional money from your other clients, right? Because if you keep on receiving money, that means that your business is operational, and that is the primary concern that any bank or NBFC would want to look at. Okay. That your business is operational on a daily basis. ऐसा नहीं हो रहा है कि the business has gone into a very slow down mode and एक ही project किया है आपने and post that there is no new fresh orders. That is something that a bank or NBFC will want to avoid.
That check would be then at a monthly level then?
At a monthly or a quarterly level, depends how the case is looked at. So it would either be at a monthly or a quarterly level. And then obviously on the day of receiving the funds, then again that check is there, that your payment terms have expired and the money has not come in. Then we would keep an eye on by when that end client is paying, so that for the next invoice we are better prepared. Although this client says 60 days mein paisa dega, he actually gives money in 70 days, not 60.
Okay. And similarly on the collection and recovery also, have you put in some control mechanisms or something?
So the collection and recovery, as I told you, is entirely escrow based, right? So there is an escrow or a virtual account, which is completely in the control of CredAble. So on the due date, your approved clients will pay money only in that account. Right, तो automatically उसमें से आपका loan भी set off हो जाता है. And if I don't have a loan set off, say for example, like I said, if I'm funding for say some Amazon invoices, my credit period is 60 days, but you've done business in the past also with Amazon, right? तो वो 60 days में भी कुछ तो पैसा will be reflected in that escrow account from Amazon. Not that I will collect that money against my loan, but at least I am seeing that you are doing continuous business with that end client.
You won't collect that money, huh? If
No, that money. So those are in lines with the RBI guidelines. Any money that comes in a virtual account or escrow account has to be transferred back to any other current account or CC account. It cannot remain there for more than 24 hours. And because I don't have a collection due on that date, right? Because whenever you submit an invoice to me, automatically in our loan management system, a date is triggered. That if this is the invoice date, then my collection date is say 60 days post the invoice date. So 60 days के पहले तो कोई collection नहीं होगा. Probably say we can set a mechanism where 50th day onwards, anything that comes in can be collected.
Okay. Right. So just on the last bit is around some finding clear actionables for the MSMEs. So part of it is exactly what are the metrics that you typically look at while evaluating the loan. And secondly is what kind of documentation can they have intact to ensure that they are in compliance with the loan.
Got it. So for key metrics, I think anyone who wants to avail lending in today's time, it is just like आज अगर आप credit card के लिए apply करने जाते हो, a bank will not issue a credit card to someone who has a salary of 20,000 rupees, for example, right? Because banks have a set mandate that anyone higher than an X amount of salary, उनको ही हम credit card देंगे. And obviously आपके monthly income पे depend करता है how much is your credit card limit. So business loan functions in a similar manner कि आपका turnover क्या है will decide if you are eligible for a loan, and two, how much loan are you eligible for, right? So whenever we speak to MSMEs, our primary goal is that we tell them that, sir, you need to target, the first target that you need to have as a business is to grow your turnover to such a state that आपका profit and loss वगैरह में depreciation, and there are various tax saving methods that can be deployed even if your business is ultimately showing a PAT loss. You are still taking money home and you are still growing your turnover. So your primary focus ideally should be on increasing the turnover, not pushing high on the margins side, right? Margins, a bank or NBFC will look at margins, but those are negligible. I mean, 10%, 15% margins, maybe banks will fund. That's not a challenge. But your turnover will decide how good you are, right? So top line is one of the most important things. The second would be vintage, right? Which is more important from bank's perspective. कोई भी बैंक पूछेगा आप 3 years का मुझे financials दो. अगर 3 years का financial नहीं है या 3 years का history नहीं है, we will not fund. So any bank or say a large NBFC like an Aditya Birla or a Tata Capital will want a vintage of business. New age NBFCs or fintechs like CredAble, we will not look at vintage if we are seeing a good traction of growth, business growth in say 6 months of starting the business also. Okay. Then again, as I told you, there are various margins that any business or any bank would look at. But more importantly, there is this debt to equity ratio, right? अगर आपके balance sheet में promoter ने या पार्टनर्स ने मिलके 50 लाख रुपीस डाले हैं और उस बैंक उसके बैलेंस शीट पे 5 करोड़ का लोन दिख रहा है, राइट? योर डेट टू इक्विटी रेशियो इज 10 times, which means effectively no bank or NBFC would want to take a further loan exposure to you. Primarily why? Because आप जो बिजनेस कर रहे हो, जो बैलेंस शीट पे दिख रहा है एटलीस्ट, वो पूरा का पूरा आप बैंक के पैसे से कर रहे हो. कल उठ के अगर बैंक ने वो 5 करोड़ से लिमिट घटा के 3 करोड़ कर दिया तो आपका टर्नओवर अगर अभी 50 करोड़ है तो 50 करोड़ से सीधा 30 करोड़ हो जाएगा. So any business should keep it in mind that they need to have a healthy mix of debt to equity ratio. Ideally it should be say 2x or 3x, कि आपका जितना equity है उसका 2x या 3x आपका लोन है, तो वो एक healthy mix होता है जिससे you can show that whenever you are doing business, your own money is also involved, not just bank's money.
Okay. Got it. And then there would be other checks like CIBIL score and all that.
Yeah, I mean, CIBIL is the first and standard nowadays, right? For any kind of a loan or anything. So yes, CIBIL is obviously one primary goal that is checked. And then yeah, again, every bank or NBFC will have an internal policy check that they need to do. Or certain things that they need to check.
Oh, got it, Abhay. So I think this has been a good session so far. And now I would just like to shift the focus to the next agenda point. So Mehul, you can take it forward from here.
Yeah. Thanks, Siddhant, and thanks, Abhay. ये session काफी insightful था, especially things like जो आपने tips दिए कि पैट लॉस में भी है, बट स्टिल इफ यू शोइंग अ हाई टर्नओवर दैट कैन हेल्प यू गेट लोन्स।
Yes,
तो हमारा
yes.
जो नेक्स्ट सेशन है अभय, हमारे दो वेंडर्स हैं। सबसे पहले मिस्टर प्रदीप सावंत, जो अपने एक्सपीरियंस के बारे में बात करेंगे।
Sure.
एंड मिस्टर प्रदीप सावंत, एक्चुअली थोड़ा सा टाइम की कमी है, तो मे बी 5 मिनट हैं, बट आप आई रिक्वेस्ट यू कि आप अपना एक्सपीरियंस शेयर करें अभी। प्रदीप जी, आप म्यूट पे हैं। हाँ,
गुड आफ्टरनून
जी, गुड आफ्टरनून सर, वेलकम।
एक्चुअली अभी जो पोस्ट पैंडेमिक ये है, मतलब अभी का जो टाइम है, पिछले
हेल्पफुल, एक बार आप अपना बता भी पाए कि आपका क्या बिजनेस है।
मैं सावंत, गौरांग प्रोजेक्ट एंड टेक्नोलॉजी प्राइवेट लिमिटेड। बेसिकली हम लोग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, फूड, फार्मा, केमिकल के प्रोजेक्ट करते हैं।
ओके,
सो
प्लीज।
अभी ये फंडिंग रिलेटेड जो भी हमारा ये था, पिछले दो ढाई साल में हमें बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस आए एक्चुअली, बिकॉज ये मतलब सडन ये था। कभी मतलब हायर वॉल्यूम के प्रोजेक्ट हमारे रनिंग थे और फंड का इशू सडनली आने लगा। तो इसमें 2-3 ऑप्शन पे मैंने काम किया, जिसमें एक मॉगलिक्स करके एक प्लेटफॉर्म है, जिनके साथ मैंने काम किया। जब भी उन्होंने जो भी पीओ या कस्टमर है, तो उनका डायरेक्ट मतलब कस्टमर का पीओ या जो भी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, मोगलिक्स के वाया रूट करके हम लोगों ने काम किया है, जिसमें प्रॉफिट शेयरिंग, मतलब जो डेल्टा सम प्रॉफिट परसेंटेज उनके साथ शेयर किया, जिसमें ईएमआई बेस वगैरह ऐसा कुछ नहीं था। जो फिक्स मार्जिन है उसको शेयर करके हम लोगों ने काम किया। और बाकी फंडिंग पे मैंने जहाँ तक ट्राई किया, तो अभी ये पैंडेमिक के बाद फंडिंग का बहुत सारा ऑप्शंस है, बट वो वर्कआउट नहीं हो पाया बिकॉज ऑफ मतलब जो भी टर्म्स कंडीशन या पिछले 2-3 साल का ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड हमारा जो था, वो मतलब जज नहीं हो पा रहा था। मतलब जो बैंक का रिकॉर्ड है उसमें हम लोग शूट नहीं कर पा रहे थे।
हमारे सेकंड वेंडर एक्चुअली मिस्टर दिवाकर हैं। एंड सर, पहले आप अपना इंट्रोडक्शन दीजिए और फिर वही सर, फाइनेंसिंग के बारे में आपका क्या एक्सपीरियंस रहा है उसके बारे में थोड़ा अगर बता सकते हैं आप। डिस्कशन कर रहे थे कि आपको बिजनेस में फाइनेंसिंग की रिक्वायरमेंट तो रही होगी कभी पास्ट में। सो आपका क्या एक्सपीरियंस रहा है, किस टाइप की रिक्वायरमेंट होती है, आपको इजीली मिलती है कि नहीं, यूजुअली आप कहाँ से लेते हैं फाइनेंसिंग? थोड़ा अगर आप 2-3 मिनट अपना एक्सपीरियंस बता पाते तो अच्छा होता।
फाइनेंशियली मैं किधर भी मैं लेता हूँ। मैं मेरा पास जो है वो उसमें यूज करके मेरे प्रोडक्ट में सप्लाई कर रहा हूँ कस्टमर के लिए। छोटा मोटा ऑर्डर तो चल रहे, वो ऑर्डर तो बड़ा हो जाएगा तो उसमें फाइनेंशियली प्रॉब्लम होएगा ना, इसीलिए कस्टमर को सपोर्ट करेगा तो हम लोग उसको सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं।
ओके,
फाइनेंस में हमको रॉ मटेरियल तो ना क्रेडिट में नहीं मिलता, इमीडिएट कैश एंड कैरी बिजनेस है वो भी। तो फाइनेंस में मेरे को सपोर्ट करेगा तो मैं भी मटेरियल सप्लाई आपका जो टाइम है वो टाइम में मैं भी सपोर्ट कर सकती हूँ। मेरे को फाइनेंशियल में मेरे को सपोर्ट होना।
तो दिवाकर जी, आपने कभी एक्सप्लोर किया है फाइनेंसिंग एज अ राउट? क्योंकि अगर आपका क्लाइंट अगर आपको एडवांस नहीं दे रहा, तो
हाँ।
फिर एक तो तरीका है कि आप वो ऑर्डर ही छोड़ दीजिए। दूसरा तरीका है कि किसी तरीके से आप कुछ लोन ले लें, जैसे ऐसी क्रेडिबल के बारे में ही हम अभी बात कर रहे थे, या फिर
हाँ।
बैंक और भी ऐसी एजेंसीज एग्जिस्ट करती हैं जिनसे
ठीक है।
आप थोड़ा सा एक लोन लें, और फिर आप वो अपना जॉब फुलफिल कर सकें, और फिर उसके बाद जो पैसा क्लाइंट से आएगा उससे आप एजेंसीज को पे बैक कर सकें। राइट, सो आपने कभी एक्सप्लोर किया है ऐसा तरीका?
नहीं किया सर।
अच्छा, अच्छा। एंड क्यों नहीं किया होगा? क्या आपको
नहीं।
रहा होगा ऐसी चीज एक्सप्लोर करने से?
कहीं को ना, तो वो तो कस्टमर तो किधर बैठेगा हमको भी पता नहीं है, मैं किधर है वो लोग को भी पता नहीं रहेगा, खाली पीओ मिलेगा, ऑर्डर तुम्हें करेगा, ठीक है, बाद में पेमेंट को थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम होएगा तो वो रिस्क कौन लेगा? फाइनेंशियली में कहीं को ना, ये लाखों रुपए का बिजनेस है, करोड़ का हिसाब से बिजनेस है। हम
ओके।
लोग किधर तो हम लोग किधर तो फाइनेंशियली में हम लोग का क्या है, 50 लाख 60 लाख का पीओ मिल जाएगा तो वो तो खत्म करके बेच, तो वो इमीडिएट एडवांस तो मिल जाएगा, विदाउट एडवांस में कोई भी काम नहीं करेगा। मैं हमको 50% एडवांस होना, बाद में पीओ देना, बाद में मैं चालू करके मटेरियल तो सब पे इन टाइम को मटेरियल सब पे हो जाएगा। मेरे को फाइनेंशियल में गारंटी होना चाहिए।
ओके।
तो गड़बड़ होएगा तो हम लोग मर जाएगा, पूरा एक ही बार अटक जाएगा।
एंड वैसे आपको आज तक किसी ने अप्रोच किया है कि
अप्रोच किए सर, 50 लाख 60 लाख तक तो ऑर्डर किया, वो फाइनेंशियल में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होता मेरे को। अभी ये पहला बार है कि वो ऐसा फाइनेंशियल का ऐसा ऐसा बात चल रहा है ना, ये तो पहला बार है।
नहीं, अप्रोच एज इन किसी बैंकिंग कॉर्पोरेशन या ऐसी लेंडिंग पार्टनर ने कभी आपको अप्रोच किया है टू
वो
टेक
लैंडिंग पड़ा में मैं लोन लिया था।
सॉरी?
लैंडिंग कार्ड में भी लोन लिया, आईडीबीआई बैंक में भी लोन लिया था, उसमें वो लेके बैंक श्योरिटी में दिया था, उसमें लेके खत्म करके उसको मटेरियल सप्लाई कर दिया। ऐसे ही उसके हिसाब से पेमेंट भी आ गया मेरे को। तो बेंगलुरु का कस्टमर है ये।
लेंडिंग कार्ड से आप कह रहे हैं आपने लोन लिया
हाँ,
था?
लेंडिंग कार्ड। हाँ,
ओके। तो वो फिर दैट हैड वर्कड आउट आपके लिए क्योंकि वहां पे फिर आई एम अज्यूमिंग कि आपको एडवांस नहीं मिला था, तो आपने फिर वो लेंडिंग कार्ड से लोन ले लिया था और उसके बाद डिलीवर। अच्छा, तो वहां से लोन लेके एक बार इट हैड वर्कड आउट फॉर यू, मतलब चल गया था एक बार काम उनसे उनसे लोन लेने के बाद?
हाँ।
अच्छा, ओके, ठीक है।
So, Siddhant, actually, we are already getting some questions. Mr. Umesh, आपका कोई सवाल है? You have a question? The floor is open. Actually, we are in the final session, final segment of the session today, which is Q&A. So, yes, sir. Hello,
Good morning,
sir.
everyone. So my name is Umesh. So I run a business in the name of Pantheon Technologies Private Limited. This is mainly based on the wastewater recycling unit. So we do a project to the customer place. So many instances, what we face is, so we complete the project, and the end we don't receive the payment. So do we get any support from the MSME? So for funds and other things, I have a set up with the bank. I am managing with that. So MSME, we haven't approached for anything as a loan or kind of thing. But I need a support where when the project is completed successfully, at the end of the things, the payment doesn't come, where we stuck up. So on that way, MSME, what way it can help us?
So, Mr. Ramesh, if I understand your doubt, you mainly saying that you have completed the job for a client, and
Yes.
how the payment is stuck. Okay.
Yes.
So, is this like a large client, like an enterprise client that you would have worked with, or would this
Yeah,
be?
so we work with this thing with the standard procedure. So with all the proper billing and all those things, we do it. So we work with the registered clients only. So not like this thing with this thing, what you call it, without GST and kind of thing.
Okay. And when you say that you have completed the project, you have submitted the invoice also, and then the invoice has been accepted by the client. Is that?
Yes, it is accepted by the client, and we have taken the completion certificate, everything.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Got it. So, Abhay, you could also step in which what I'm understanding is he has completed the project. His invoice has been shared, and that has been accepted. And then.
No, so what I understand here, Mr. Umesh, is that this. So when you say that you're working with GST, right? So probably most of the businesses today or in these times are working with GST. What you would need to understand, or what we as an NBFC also try to understand, is the schedule. So as I told you, right, we come across cases where on PO terms, the end client has written that they will make payment in 30 days from the date of invoice. The payment terms are written as 30 days. But yes, the actual receipt of money happens after 90 days, for example, right? So we've seen those scenarios. we can look at certain kinds of fundings against those invoices, right? But for that, what we need to understand is, one, we need to understand the cycle, right? So say if we just were disbursing certain amounts of invoices against certain invoices yesterday, where the payment terms have been mentioned as 30 days. But we have seen in the sales ledger of the MSME that the end client, although is a very large corporation based out of north of India, and they are a very large packaging industry client, but they will make payments only after 90 days.
Okay.
They will write 30 days, but make payment only after 90 days. So if we have a track record, right, then you can definitely approach NBFCs or fintechs like CredAble and, submit your documents there to undertake an invoice discounting, wherein you get the money on day one of your invoice being discounted. And when the bank or NBFC reviews the facility, they will have checked it or verified it. The last 1 year sales ledger, we are seeing that this end client is always paying after 90 days. So irrespective of what he writes on the PO or the invoice, he will make payment after 90 days. So you will get the funding for the 90 days.
Okay, so this is not like this actually. So this is a kind of a small project like it is. So they will give an advance. So we will submit the drawings and the thing. So then after that, against the supplies, we get some funds, and after that, execution and commissioning, we get the final payment.
Final payment.
So here, what happens, because since we do it at the customer's place, so we will not have any grip over our product or anything.
Correct.
And these are all this thing. It's not. They are all not small customers. So they are in multi-crore turnover companies. Okay, when such kind of circumstances, they will have every kind of this thing facility to fix us in any manner. Okay, on that kind of thing. So I mean, it's a kind of a fear that so even we approach to the legal department also. So that is the scenario. So on such kind of circumstance.
No, so see, if you have an invoice that is approved, as you mentioned, right?
Yes.
And if the corporation is a large corporation, as I told you, you can always avail an invoice discounting facility. That is one. And two, a large corporation can try to delay the payment, say, citing reasons of quality, right? But the second point is, if they have an invoice that is approved in their system, right? They can never delay payment against an approved invoice. So there are two instances. You raising an invoice is one point. But if they have approved the invoice, then there is no matter what, if there might be a delay in terms of payments, but they will not fail in making the payment, because then it is legally binding on them, right? And for say a 10 lakh, 20 lakh, 50 lakh rupees also, a large corporate who is working at a 500 crore plus turnover, they will not want to take it to court, or they will not want to make it public that they failed to make a payment of 40 lakh rupees or 50 lakh rupees, right? So in terms of quality control, I understand your concern. We have certain suppliers who work for electric companies, right? Say companies like Adani Power or Tata Power, where their project in terms of hardware and software is done at the client site. And the project is, say, 6 months long or 12 months long. And it is done at the client site. But again, if the invoice is approved, they will not they will not fail to kind of, make the payment on the due date.
This is not kind of an Ambani or Adani company. It is a kind of a typical Reddy company, where it will be run by all the family people. Okay, so
okay. Yeah, so see, then it becomes slightly difficult.
Professionalism from that.
Correct.
Mehul, sorry, I'll just quickly address something. Abhay, I have a question for you, and Mr. Umesh, uske baad bhi I wanted to say something. So Abhay, do you also advise your MSMEs, right, when they come to take loans from you, saying that, your customer ka CIBIL score itna kam hai, itna zyada hai, they are medium, and hence would it be right to take or do work with them or do business with them? Do you advise on that?
So we do that. So it is not just about customer CIBIL score, right? But as I was just discussing with Mr. Umesh as well, we do a check. So we will not fund against invoices of, like, say, if in India, anything lower than 250 crores turnover is categorized as an MSME, right? Now, we will not fund against invoices of MSMEs, because ultimately that defeats the purpose of that unsecured lending. Otherwise, it would be just similar to, say, something like an Aditya Birla giving a 25 lakhs ka EMI based loan. If I am, say, opening lines of 5 crores for invoice discounting, I will not do invoice discounting of an end client who is also an MSME. That would defeat the entire purpose. So we would do invoice discounting or PO financing of any company which is, say, a BBB plus or higher rated. So that information can directly be checked through Google, right? Or else we will do invoice discounting of larger MNCs who have subsidiaries in India. Their Indian business might be only 100 crores, but they are, say, a French company or a German company, which is a very large company.
Okay, got it. So Umesh, for your point also, right? Venwiz as a platform is also trying to solve this problem, right? Usually when we go to our manufacturing clients, they also raise problems that, when they give a job to an MSME or any other vendor, they always are afraid that the vendor will leave the work in between and go away, right? So any kind of advance given and all that. So there's a fear in terms, even for clients. Similarly, there is a valid fear that you have also expressed, right? You have done the work, but the clients have not paid. I think the best way to do this is to solve that transparency issue, where you know what sort of a client you are working with beforehand. They have a good transaction history, not just with you, right? There are multiple vendors that they'll work with. So how is their transaction history with all those multiple vendors? Similarly, clients also will understand which kind of vendors that are there in the market. So we as a platform are trying to build the transaction history, both from the client end as well as from the vendors end. And that's where the transparency we are trying to bridge, right? So over a period of time, we expect this kind of transparency to help address your issues as well as clients' issues.
Okay, when such kind of circumstance, will you bring those, both the people into one platform and for a discussion kind of thing, like a settlement kind of thing?
I think as a platform, we need to do that whenever a dispute arises, right? We can do that. Currently on our platform, we haven't faced those situations yet, but definitely we will step in there.
But you have the ability to call those people.
You're talking about the clients?
Yeah.
So
the last client, they don't come. So to my earlier experience, I've done a job for Gitanjali Jewelers. So in the Hyderabad. So once I filed a case, so I could not able to see anybody coming to the court all the time. So I only need to go submit all the invoices, marking the documents, everything. It took almost 2 to 3 years, but none of the time they did come. So I had to visit almost more than about some 25, 30 times each day. So the full day takes over there in the court. So then one fine day, so I told to my tall lawyer, just forget it. So I cannot come again and again. Because every day I'll be losing my time, everything. But none of the time I've seen the client is coming to the court. So that lawyer comes, he just spends some time because as he is paid, so he spends 5-10 minutes and then he walks out. But whereas for me, it is a full day it is consuming.
Okay.
So when such kind of circumstance, you people have that kind of capacity to call such a large people in front of the table. Because they find it difficult to come.
Mr. Umesh, our endeavor is that we become that kind of a player, right? That we solve problems on both ends. We are going to try for that. Yes.
Mr. Umesh, thank you for your question. Mr. Rahman, I had seen you had also raised your hand. Are you here? I think this is the final question we can. Yes, Mr. Rahman.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks for giving this opportunity. Actually, I had a manufacturing unit of precast manufacturing products. So I'm looking for a working capital loan. So is it possible from your platform to I get the working capital loan for my business?
Sure, Mr. Rahman. This is the kind of thing that we have been discussing, and for that there would be certain more requirements for us to understand before being able to figure out how much loan can we. Right? Certain other nuances also. Abhi, would you want to shed some light on what are the specific?
Yes. So I'll just give you a brief, Mr. Rahman, and any other participants who would want to kind of check their own eligibility, and if they are looking for a quicker loan at a smaller ticket size also. So CredAble has a platform called Upscale, right? You can just search for Upscale on Google, and you will reach this page wherein you enter your GST details, your PAN details, right? You would be, say, managing your accounts in a software like Tally, right? So we've built in a software where it integrates with everything from your Tally to your PAN to your GST to your, say, client's GST also. If you want to check your client's GST, or as Mr. Umesh was saying, you want to check the end client's PAN card, right? You can check on those details also, and that software piece will define a limit up to a maximum of 25 lakhs on a very immediate basis. So within 24 hours, a working capital loan of 25 lakhs can be sanctioned or not will be informed to you. For anything higher than that, the entire file will automatically move to our lending team, and one of our lending relationship managers will get in touch with you and try to understand what kind of a working capital loan will fit your profile.
Sure. So that much only I'm looking for, sir. 25 lakhs, less than 25 lakhs only I'm looking for the loan.
Sure. So you can always, you can visit Upscale. It is UPSCALE, Upscale. And you can just visit it on Google and basically integrate with your PAN, GST and Tally, and you will get a loan eligibility immediately.
Right, sir. Right. Thank you for your information, sir. I will try it. And please be in touch, sir.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone for their questions. So since we have already exceeded the time, I think we'll have to close it here. But as I've written in the chat, if you have any further queries, please feel free to drop a mail at vendor.connect@venwiz.com. Right? Anything related to financing, or you want to connect with Mr. Abhay or anything. And once again, thanks everyone for joining in. Thank you for your time and looking forward to your participation. Thank you, Mr. Tushar. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Siddhant. Thanks, Mitali.
Thank you, everyone.